So, hello guys, when Tal plays chess, it's not just a game, it's an attack on the board. In this 1987 SWIFT Blitz tournament held in Brussels, Mikhail Tal faces Anatoly Karpov, and trust me, this isn't just a game, it's a demolition. Sacrifices, tactics, and pure chaos. Get ready for some real chess magic. I am your host Bison. Let's dive in. Here, Tal starts the game with e4, c6 by Karpov, Caro-Kann Defense, c4. This move controls the d5 square and the knight is ready to jump on c3 next. This setup is known as accelerated Panov Attack, and after this, Karpov strikes towards the center by playing d5. Okay, e takes d5, c takes d5, c takes d5, and instead of capturing the pawn, Karpov chooses the right path, which is to develop the knight, attacking the d5 pawn while also controlling the e4 square. Okay, so note one thing, that developing pieces is more important than grabbing the material early. Okay, so after this, Tal develops his knight on c3, keeping an eye on the e4 square. Now Karpov grabbed the pawn on d5 and Tal develops his knight on f3. After this, Karpov exchanges the knight and then played g6, preparing for the move bishop to g7, eyeing on the g7 diagonal, but now Tal grabbed the center by playing d4. Okay, bishop to g7, bishop to d3, and here Tal is preparing for castle. After this, both sides castled and knight to c6 by Karpov. Maybe he wants to push e5 next. Now Tal slides his rook on e1 and Karpov mirrors with rook to e8. Here Tal placed his dark square bishop on g5, pinning the e7 pawn so that black can't play e5. Okay, everything was fine till here, but Karpov made a mistake by playing bishop to c6. His idea is to place his bishop on d5 next, creating some pressure along this e5 diagonal. However, this moves also slows down the black development. Here, a better option would be play foot for black to play bishop to g4, pinning the knight and then activating his pieces, which continues the proper development. But he forget that, and his opponent is not an ordinary player. He is the magician of chess, Mikhail Tal, and in this position, Tal shocks the board with a brilliant rook sacrifice by playing rook takes e6. Okay, so Tal played this move to completely shatter black king's safety. The idea is after f takes e6, now comes bishop to c4, targeting the weak e6 pawn. Karpov tries to defend his pawn by playing queen to d6, but this is of no use because Tal brings his queen on e2, creating more pressure on this e6 pawn. Karpov defends it by his knight, but after this, Tal brings his another piece into the game, and you can see that no one can defend this e6 pawn. After this, Karpov brings his rook on c8, activating his last piece. But note one thing, that in this position, here white can't takes on e6 because after this, black will play knight takes e6. If queen takes e6 check, queen takes e6, rook takes e6, rook takes c3. And you can see that white is a rook down while black is completely fine with an extra bishop as well as two connected pawns. In the long run, black will easily tear apart the white position, but Tal set up this position intentionally. Here, his goal is to maintain the pressure on this e6 square, forcing black into a defensive stance. Okay, after this, knight to d2 by Tal, adding a support on the bishop as well as he wants to place his knight on e4 next. After this, he slides his king on h8, unpins the king, but here computer suggests the move queen to c7, targeting the bishop and preventing white knight jumping to e4. However, this move is not easy to find. After this, Tal wastes no time. He immediately jumps his knight on e4, hitting the queen, and after queen to c7, which attacks the bishop, Tal takes back his bishop on b3, and finally he pushed his e pawn further. And obviously you can't capture on e5, otherwise it will activate the dark square bishop. Hence, in this position, Tal finds a great move h4. He wants to push h5, and after this, Karpov takes on d4, which is a mistake. Instead of this, he must bring his rook into the game so that it can be placed on f5. Because suppose after white pushed h5, then after g takes h5, queen takes h5, e takes d4, c takes d4, queen to d7, and in the next move, black will play rook f5, pinning this bishop, and the game will be completely equal. Okay, so in the game after e takes d4, h5 by Tal, a great move, and after this, he wants to push h5, h6 next, hitting the bishop, but simply he takes on h5, and after queen takes h5, you can see that Tal brings his queen, and you can see the defense of the black. But guys, after the move g takes h5, Tal missed something brutal, because after g takes h5, the winning move for white is not to capture this pawn. Instead, the move is to sacrifice the knight, and if Tal finds this move, Karpov will resign immediately. This is because you can't capture the knight with the e-pawn, otherwise you can see that white queen will capture the rook and black will get checkmated. And suppose if bishop takes knight, then simply bishop takes f6 check, and you can see that there is no more square left for the black king, because the g8 square is already covered by this light square bishop. Hence, the only move for black is to capture the bishop. So after this move, the only move is rook to f8. And suppose in this position, if this move was played, then again white can play this beautiful move, which is knight takes h7, and after king takes h7, then comes queen takes h5 check, and the only move is bishop to h6, and then comes queen takes h6 checkmate. So after the move queen to h5 in the actual game, here Karpov brings his rook on f8, defending the rook from the queen, and after bishop to c2, you can see the threat. Here he wants to remove his knight on, place his knight on f6, and you can see the threat. Okay, so after this, Karpov decides to place his queen on e5, which pins the bishop, but in this position, Tal shocked the chessboard by playing knight to g3, sacrificing his rook, and Karpov immediately takes on e1 with a check, and after king to h2, he blundered and played h6, because here Tal simply takes on h6, and after king to g8, then he grabs the bishop, and you can see that now black king is completely open. But guys, wait. After the move king to h2, from this position, the correct move is not to play not to play the move h6. This move is incorrect, and this move is a blunder. So what black can play here? Okay, so the move is bishop to h6, sacrificing the bishop, because after white takes on h6, now comes rook to f7, guarding the g7 and h7 squares. And if white tries to open the black king by playing bishop to takes h7. Then to save the game, the move is not to grab the bishop, otherwise white queen will enter on e8 with a checkmate. Hence the only move is rook to c6. And now white has to move his bishop on e4. Otherwise, suppose if white plays any another move like knight to f5. Now I just want you all to pause the video and try to find the next god level move which black can play in this position to save the game. No, you can't find, because this is next to impossible. The move is rook takes h6. Oh my god, what a move! Sacrificing the rook, because one thing is clear, that you can't grab it with the queen. Otherwise, you can see that black will takes on h7 and white has to lose his queen. Hence, suppose if white grabs the rook with the knight, then after rook takes h7, you can see that black is a rook up and completely winning here. Okay, so in the actual game, after the move bishop takes h7, rook takes f2. He grabbed the pawn on f2, but guys, this is of no use because Tal simply gives a check from the h7 square, and after king to f7, queen to g6 check, and king to g8, and the final move by Tal is bishop to h6 check, and there is a mate in one, so that's why Karpov resigned. What an amazing attacking game by Mikhail Tal. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked this video. Please subscribe to my channel because this motivates me a lot. This is your host Bison signing off. Bye bye.